Hey, beautiful souls, welcome to Mind Over Matter, the podcast that dives into the depths of mindset, motivation, and everything that fuels a thriving life. I'm your host, Avik, and today we are going on a journey that will leave you inspired, energized, and ready to level up. So, joining us is someone who truly embodies the idea of living life with intention and the purpose. So, meet Matthew Tack. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Lovely, lovely. So, Matthew, like before we start our conversation, I'd quickly love to introduce you to all of our listeners. Dear listeners, Matthew is the co host of the Fulfilled podcast and a man on a mission to redefine what it means to live at peak performance. So, from overcoming personal struggles in his 20s to creating a life of meaning, Matthew now focuses on six pillars: full movement, sleep, mind, walk, and spirit. So he's a father of three, a devoted husband, and a business leader in human longevity and optimal performance. So, Matthew, welcome to the show. I can't wait to dive into your story and hear your insights on building a full fueled life. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the conversation and everything about our six pillars.
Yeah, exactly. Lovely. so, okay, I'll start with you have been through some tough times and completely shifted your mental state. So, what was the turning point for you? I mean, how did you begin to cultivate a mindset of the resilience and the purpose?
Yeah, I think people tend to overcomplicate it in terms of how we approach like each day, right?
Mhm.
And became a renewed focus each and every day, right? So when I was in my 20s, I was actually just sharing this last night with somebody. Kind of like your test becomes your testimony. And through the narrative of living a very, self-driven, self-focused life, just dabbling into just over abusing alcohol in college and kind of not knowing my way, right? I always considered myself an athlete. And then I kind of lost that way after high school and college. It's like, oh, what do I do now? I just had this competitive edge to me. And I really didn't know how to translate that to the business world in my mid 20s. And so I just had this like super negative mindset of like life happens to me, it doesn't happen for me. And so it wasn't until really I doubled down on just this act of humility that where I needed help. And so it was through, almost therapy. So I went into a Celebrate Recovery program through like kind of a church facility. And then I'm a big believer in utilizing therapists and coaches. But it wasn't until that I started focusing on each new day, right? Um,
Yeah.
each new day brings a new story to create, and you get to dictate that story. And so, something I always tell my girls is we control two things, right? Attitude and action. And so if we can look at things in terms of what our actions are and what our attitude is, we can have a healthier mindset that goes into each day. And so that's really where there was a culmination for me of really going through that therapy in my 20s of like what does a healthy mindset look like and how can I renew that every day?
Mm. Wow. And I mean, that's really so powerful. So I imagine like it wasn't a straight path. So were there moments where you doubted yourself or maybe felt stuck?
Yeah, I mean there are still seasons of that. I'm not gonna
Mm.
I'm not gonna say that doubt never creeps in, right? But it's this game of shortening the gap, right? And so I call it shortening the gap because I listened to a guy, he played baseball, Aubrey Huff, and I put it into a baseball analogy. Um, but whether you play cricket or you whether play baseball or you play soccer, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's you're gonna have a bad game. You're gonna have a bad day, right? So the idea of sport, it's like you're going to have something bad
Mm.
happen. It's how you respond to that. And so that really is it, is like next time I get up to the plate, how can I go in with a renewed mindset that I'm not going to strike out? No way. What am I telling? What's my inner dialogue telling
Mm.
myself? No, I'm going to hit this thing out of the park. And what's my greatest chance of success? Right.
Yeah.
And so it's what you focus on is what you get out of it. And so
Mm.
that renewed mindset is important each day is like, I'm going to go in for the home run. Right. Um, I'm gonna go in and swing, still swinging. I'm not, there might be some small tweaks that I gotta change because I realize I got a bad habit and I gotta adjust those things. But it's just like sport is like, what are those tweaks? How am I learning and growing so that I can hit the ball more efficiently?
I mean, I really loved it, and also here I have to say, I mean, it's amazing how often those tough moments become the catalyst for the change. I mean, I think so many people who are listening can relate to feeling stuck. What I'm saying, I mean, but your story definitely shows the transformation is absolutely possible. So thank you so much for sharing this. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and also like. Um, Mindset and motivation often go hand in hand. Um, but motivation can be fleeting also. So how do you balance those moments? I mean, the high energy with the discipline to keep going, even when the motivation fades.
Yeah, you can't just focus on the motivation, right? The
Yeah,
motivation comes when you get the momentum.
exactly.
But the reality is everyone wants like, the motivation to like continue. And um the reality is the motivation might not be there. And so I always go back to like working out, right?
Yeah.
Everyone needs to work out, but when it becomes boring is when people are like, I don't want to do it, or when things become really difficult, I don't have the motivation anymore. So you got to focus on the habit, not the motivation, right? And
Yeah.
so it's the discipline of consistency, which very few people have, right? When it gets
Mm.
old and hard and difficult, then you're at the point of, hey, I'm gonna bow out of this because,
Yeah.
I don't have the motivation anymore to do it. Now, I think you need to discern, right? Because like in
Mm.
acts of business, like I've gotten into business ventures as of late that honestly didn't make sense. And I was like, did I pray about this? Did I really think about this? One. And so there's an element of discernment where there's times where you need to, hey, I
Yeah.
need to get out of this one. But then there's this piece of, wait, am I stopping because it's difficult, right? Is this the reason why I'm stopping? And if it's just purely that,
Mm.
then you're probably in like a poor mindset about it. And so then it becomes that renewed mindset of like,
Mm.
well, what are the avenues do I get? And that's where breaking things down, small successes and very small pieces. And so my mindset is like, don't set these like overarching, crazy, lofty goals, right?
Mm.
I actually aim 12 weeks out. So I aim things in 90-day stints. And I was
Mm.
like, if we can do things in 90 days, we get some good data involved,
Yeah.
then we can have the measurable for the next 90 days. I'm not saying you can't have like these big overarching goals or a big theme for like the year or years ahead. But and that's a good for manifestation power of like kind of where you're tracking and where you're going. But the reality is what can I do consistently for the next 90 days? Uh,
Mm.
and then it becomes breaking those downs into day by day pieces. And so like, how do I eat healthier? How do I sleep a little bit better? Right. Cognitively, how am I approaching work with a better mindset? Like all these things that you can be cognitively aware of, and then just like scorecard them, right? Did I
Mm.
do this today or did I not do this today? Why or why not? And so when you ask those questions, they usually lead to better questions, right? And then you'll
Yeah.
get better answers out of that. So, that's just one approach that I've quite honestly had over the past, uh,
Mm.
really, years, I guess at this point is
Mm.
a lot less people need to focus on the what's going to happen in 5 years, 3 years. You can have
Mm.
those dreams and ambitions. But the reality is, what does the next 90 days look like? Let's break them up. Let's do it day by day so that you can become hyper efficient.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I mean, I have to say that, like, uh, I mean, it's such a relatable concept, like celebrating the progress rather than perfection. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something everyone can take away and apply today. Yeah, yeah. So, also like, uh, health and fitness are obvious a big part of your life, definitely. So, you talk about like living fulfilled. So, what does mean for you? I mean, how can someone start adopting that philosophy in their own life?
Yeah, it goes back to kind of what we aforementioned. All those things are like, what are the daily disciplines? You know, I have something right here that's a sign in my house that I want to make sure that I read every day. But watch your thoughts before they become words. Watch your words for they become actions. Watch your actions for they become habits. Watch your habits for they become your character. And watch your character for it becomes your destiny. Destiny. What we think is what we become. And so, you know,
Mm.
it's very simple. Like, are you capturing taking every thought captive? And so if you're doing that, and you're doing that intentionally, then you're growing. Because if you're not growing, you're dying at the end of the day. If you're not like, you should be learning something new every day, every year. Like I always want to learn. I want to learn from people. I'm kind of one of those aggressors that like to think about things. Very intentionally. And so, how are you learning and growing every single day? And, one of the easiest ways to do that for somebody to live a fulfilled lifestyle is working out, right?
Yeah,
Training. I've never met anyone that doesn't truly appreciate how they've like if they've gone from, maybe 20, 30, 100 pounds overweight to dropping that weight and like feeling really good about themselves, right? They're in a way better mindset. Like I've never known anyone not to do that. Like that is a precursor for success, right?
yeah,
And so if you really invest that energy and that time into devoting like how you're protecting your shell, and that's why we're so big on like,
yeah.
hey, how are you protecting your shell, right? You don't have to live in pain.
Mm.
You don't have to live highly inflamed. And so there's so many people that miss out on the opportunity to live in a body that they absolutely love. Like they're like, yes, I made this happen, right?
Mm.
And that's like very few can that comes back to the attitude and actions piece of like yourself, right? Think very cynically. And I would encourage this as we're in January, right? Think very cynically about how you're approaching yourself and like inward, like, hey, I, I don't need to worry about anybody else. What's in it for me? And I don't think that's a bad thing to say when you're talking about your body. And so, because when you can control that and you can have a body that you love waking up to every day,
Yeah,
then that ultimately falls into how you can better serve other people. And so we do that at our clinic in Tampa Bay, and that's what we coach is, how can you serve yourself first so that you can serve others better?
yeah. Perfect. That's great. Yeah. And I have to say, it's so refreshing, like to hear health framed as more than just the diet or the exercise. So, yeah, it's about creating harmony across all the areas of life. I like, I mean, it's like designing your own masterpiece. So, yeah,
Absolutely. I love that. Designing your own masterpiece. You
yeah,
get to do that. You have full control over it.
yeah. Perfect, perfect. And also like, we often talk about the goals and everything. So goals are definitely the big topic for many of us. We talk about it a lot. So especially as we kick off a new year or season, like we often take like, okay, my new year resolution or the goal is like this. So how do you uh, I mean, what do you say? Like, how do you set the meaningful goals that align with your values and avoid falling into the trap of unrealistic expectation?
Yeah, that's really coming back to where you're
Mm.
at right now, right?
Yeah.
And then where you want to be. But then it goes back to what I said earlier was 90 days. Like, what does 90 days look like? If I did this every day for 90 days, what does it look like?
Mm,
And so when you set those realistic expectations,
mm,
they're manageable, right? And maybe it's more so like, a lot of people like going weight, right? I want to drop some weight this year. Well, it's like, okay, well, how much weight do I want to lose?
mm,
And then if you backtrack that over 90 days, like, well, what do I need to do every day consistently that would get me to that goal in 90 days?
mm.
Um, and anyone can do anything in 90 days, right?
Yeah.
But the results become measurable at that point.
Mm,
And so there's a number of ways in terms of like how you can set goals, but I would honestly get a
mm,
blank sheet of paper. And really I would map out, right? I like mapping out faith, finance, fitness, are like basically the top three. Like, what do I want my financials to look like in 90 days?
yeah.
So, what do I want my faith? Like, everyone has to have, like, if you don't have a faith, like,
Mm,
then you have a faith in something. Like, so I would
mm,
encourage you to kind of find a deeper meaning of who you are, because like everyone has a soul. And so tap into that, right? How do I tap into that more? And so for me, I want to tap into that every single day, because that helps me to have a better, healthier mindset towards the way I parent, towards the way I'm a husband to my wife. Um, and so uh, those are big things in terms of how the overarching, like, what can I establish to get a little bit better. But I like keeping it in those three: faith, finance, and fitness. Um, and then, you know, there's this element of I'd have another guy that, does
mm,
fun too, because he likes getting good at something that, like,
mm,
that spawns his mind, that's fun for him, right? And so you can add in another F, being there is fun, but getting a blank notebook and just writing. I think writing is a crucial thing when you can take it out of your mind and put it on
mm,
paper and it becomes reality. And so, but those things have to be measurable in the terms of like what it takes for 90 days. I wouldn't put like, I want to lose, 150 pounds in 90 days, because that's not realistic, right?
yeah.
Unless you get surgery. But if you're like, I want to be more disciplined in my health, right?
Mm,
Well, then it becomes, how do I measure my macros? And so it might be researching of how you measure your macros to lose that
mm,
weight, right? Yeah, I need to stay hydrated more throughout the day, so I need to drink more water.
yeah.
And then I need to reduce maybe my carbohydrate and fat intake and increase my protein intake. So those are and then having a caloric expenditure that, that you like, input versus output. And so that's one way for weight. But then, even like finances is another thing that you can have as a measurable. What is something I love YouTube. You can get educated on YouTube like crazy these days. And so, like, what is something that I could, as a measurable, learn something new, right? And so, whatever that is, for me, I'm working on Spanish. And so Spanish was a big thing for me.
Mm,
And so what did I do? I downloaded an app called Duolingo. And Duolingo allowed me to, uh, learn some new words every day. So I put that in my repertoire, that 5 to 10 minutes every day. I'm going to start building the cadence of a new language skill set that really adds value to me. And so it allows me to like nurture my mind and grow and
mm,
increase my neuroplasticity in my brain. So, uh, there's like these small things. And then, so I've been doing that for 3 years now.
mm,
And again, I don't have this overarching goal that I want to be fluent by, I
mm,
do want to be fluent. That is a goal. So one of my goals is actually I want to live abroad for 6 months, because I think that'll expedite that process. But
mhm,
over the past 3 years, I realized where I'm at. And I was like, you know what? If I could get a couple thousand words in my repertoire of a new language, it'll really help me. And so that's really where I've taken that. And it's just been a building block for me. And so, uh, this year for me is to really get a better understanding of the stock market. And so I invest about an hour every day into really understanding and learning the stock market, keeping up to pace with, the elections and and just how things are incorporated there. So
Mhm.
that's just that's a big thing for me right now and a big push. And I'm going to measure that over 90 days. What does that look like? And
Mhm.
so as I learn and grow in that area of really understanding the market and how the market ebbs and flows. So those are just some ways, but writing it down, right? I have a blank
Mhm.
notebook right next to me. I'm always writing stuff down, always thinking of things in terms of how to grow our practice and grow our business.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Lovely. And so, like, I have to say, like, as a father and the leader, you are setting an example for your daughters and others around you. So, how has your mindset and the lifestyle influenced the way that you, as a parent, and lead in your businesses?
Yeah, that's a amazing question. I don't think anyone's ever asked
Mhm.
me that on a podcast, and I love that. I love that because that's
Mhm.
the one thing that really is the most important to me at the end of the day. And I truly feel that
Mhm.
my life is not complete. Like, I always still wanna grow, but if I can be a celebrity in my home, that's all that counts, right? And so, I treat it as I'm nurturing my kids' souls, right? I'm not just parenting them, I'm actually nurturing their soul. And so, I have 3 little girls and,
Mhm.
that I'm in a really good season of life where they're 8, 7, and 5, and I really get to nurture their soul. So I always ask them every day, how was your day?
Mhm.
What did you learn today?
Yeah.
And so to get to know them more intimately, I
Mhm.
always put them to bed at night is just something that's in my routine.
Mhm.
But, you know, that's a major thing for me in terms of bit being an entrepreneur, but like also realizing that I have a priority, right? And I have a
Mhm.
priority number one to be a husband, secondly to be a parent, and then thirdly to be a good entrepreneur. And
Mhm.
so for me, I like I really bring things back home and I'm like, you know, there's a number of things that I want to do. And this is why, like, kind of that goal setting piece has really changed, in my opinion, of not looking at things so far out, but like really taking day by day because
Mhm.
I want to see the growth in my kids, right? And I think that
Yeah.
presence is all we have. And so when we're truly present in that process, I can be there intentionally with my wife and my kids. And,
Mhm.
just as an example right now, like we're going through a really hard season with my mother-in-law, who's like a second mom to me.
Mhm.
She has stage 4 cancer and she's probably in her last days. And I think, you know, during this season, I need to be there for my wife, and
Yeah.
she needs to know that I'm there for her. And
Mhm.
so that's where things really have like kind of shifted a little bit in terms of like how we're operating.
Mhm.
Um, and how we ebb and flow through life. So I was talking earlier about how sometimes, everyone has a plan until
Mhm.
they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
I realized that this year is going to look a little bit different, than most
Mhm.
years. And with that, I want to make sure if I'm not here during a season where my wife really, really needs me, then
Mhm.
I'm not going to be there for her in, 3, 4 years, right? She'll remember this time.
Mhm.
And so it's the same thing with my kids.
Mhm.
I get to capture a moment in their life that likely is going to dictate the rest of their life. And so if
Yeah.
I'm not present with them during this season,
Mhm.
then like it'll dictate them how they're going to treat me in their 20s and their 30s. When I really want, them to be close, I want them to come home for Christmas. I want those things. And so it's
Mhm.
nurturing that soul and taking care of that soul. Same with my wife to ultimately know that like I'm there for you, right? And I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say it's easy work because it's definitely not easy work. Um, but it's one of those things where it's very rewarding when you can think of things as an act of service within your home. And so and then that bleeds out into the world in terms
Mm,
of how we do our practice, how we do our coaching, how do we do all these things, um, is like an act of service.
mm. Perfect. That's really, really awesome and great. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your insights, and your energy with us definitely today. So, you have given us all so much to think about when it comes to the mindset, motivation, health, and living a fulfilled life. So, to everyone who is tuning in, remember that transformation doesn't happen overnight, but every step forward, no matter how small, it gets you closer to your goals. And if today's episode has resonated with all of you, then take a moment to reflect on one change that you can make today, whether it's rethinking your goals, or maybe starting a new habit, or maybe simply being kinder to yourself. That's the best option, right? So, hey, so if you love this conversation, do not forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Your support definitely means the world to us and helps us bring you more inspiring guests like Matthew to the show. So, until next time, this is your host Avik signing off. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.